Hello. So today I have been reflecting. In fact, I woke up. I was in that state between sort of being semi in a dream mode and wide awake, or not necessarily wide awake, but aware of what was going on in the new day. Reflecting on how much we potentially can indulge, what the Bible, and this particular video is probably aimed more at folks that have a faith, be that well, probably from one of the Abrahamic traditions, I should say. So when we're talking about um, a sin of the flesh, and actually what that means, and does that apply to those of us who are drawn to an interest in cross streaming, and I guess trans people in general would probably fall into that category, having a sense of their body, biology, their being, their essence being in the wrong body. Question of whether God, as it were, makes mistakes is for another day. I have quite a clear view on that, but not for today. We'll get into quite a lot of discussion. But this question of whether we are easily tempted by something that takes us away, this is solely my understanding and definition of what sin is. I don't like the word personally, but it's obviously the one that's most commonly used. Sin for me is separation from what is good, pure, of the spirit, if you like, what is divine, what actually unites us with the all, with God, with oneness, brings us into the universal field. So, not actually in the Bible, but the famous seven deadly sins, which was a term coined by one of the popes. I think it was Pope Gregory the First, Gregory the Great. Previously, apparently, there were 8 deadly sins, but he limited it to 7 for whatever reason. They are what can draw us away from being in, to use the Christian term, communion with God, being open to receiving Spirit and the so-called fruits of the Spirit. And a good example, which I must confess I can relate to, is gluttony. There are times when I am a bit greedy for food. I don't necessarily need food, but I have a yearning, I have an appetite. And sometimes I can resist that. I have the discipline to resist, and other times I don't. I overeat. So gluttony is identified, as you may well know, as one of these 7 deadly sins. And the idea, why is it deadly? Why is it called deadly? It is because it draws us away from a focus on what is wholesome, what will enable Spirit to flow freely within us. Now, that doesn't mean, I think, and this was my reflection this morning, that it is always wrong to feel hungry. That's obviously a natural human urge, which we must assume is meant to be. It's part of the divine design, if you like, part of the creation, if that's the way you see things. And it's also at times very good to enjoy food, to enjoy a sensory experience, to enjoy any sensual experience that is what we might say naturally gifted to us. So that includes our sexual behavior as well. And there's something really quite wonderful about enjoying our sexuality. I think the reflection I was having this morning is more along the lines of, where do you cross the line between what is enjoyable, what is meant to be enjoyable, what is meant to be at a particular point? Sex clearly has a purpose in procreation, so it is meant to be that we engage in it and enjoy that union that comes through sex, and the beautiful ecstasy that comes with it has a spiritual quality. But of course, we probably know, or many of us know, that it can very easily tip into something that is less than wholesome. And I really don't know what the line is here. I think this is what I'm struggling with. But it seems to me it's more to do we go out deliberately seeking a sensual urge when we do not. And here that may be, for example, I am spending far too much time on the internet looking for stimulation, sexual stimulation, when actually we do not need that at a particular moment. And indeed, we might actually be deliberately going out to look for a stimulus, a trigger to create arousal. Is that a deadly sin? Well, if you take the Christian terminology, it would be, because then you would be putting your focus, as it were, away from what is purely godly. It doesn't mean that there isn't a place for being stimulated, a place for being excited, a place for exploration, and that can include internet searches as well. So I think where I'm coming to at the moment, this is a question that is sitting with me at the moment, to which I don't have an answer, is when it comes to an interest in exploring sexuality, and an internet searching exercise might be a good example. It's probably more about what is taking priority and how often and how much time especially is being indulged in that. And I think when it becomes very important that, we can't get through the day unless we've indulged in some sensual pleasure, let's say, not necessarily addictively, but something that when we're given free time, that is what we latch on to, and maybe spend a lot of time doing that. I think that's when probably this line is crossed between what is acceptable and what is wholesome. The Bible passage, and I did warn those who might not be of a religious position, so if that's your case, you don't have faith, then you're not going to probably be interested in this part of the video. That I was led to is Galatians chapter 5, and here from verses 13 through to, what are we? Well, I go through to verse 19. You, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free, but do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. And I understand that word, from what I read online, the Greek word at least here, sarx, refers to the sinful state of human beings. Often this idea of separation from God, in other words, often presented as being a power, essentially, that's in opposition to the spirit. So do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. I think that's really the critical line that was standing out for me. Indulge the flesh. Rather, serve one another humbly in love. The entire law is fulfilled in keeping the command. Love your neighbors, your neighbor as yourself. If you bite and devour each other, this is the New International Version's translation, watch out, or you will be destroyed by each other. So I say, says Paul, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the flesh desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit what is contrary to the flesh. They are in conflict with each other, so that you are not to do whatever you want. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. The acts of the flesh are obvious: sexual immorality, impurity and debauchery, idolatry and witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions and envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like. I warn you, as I did before, that those who live like this will not inherit the kingdom of God. So perhaps those things, debauchery, idolatry, witchcraft, and so on, are kind of extreme consequences of living, making your indulgence, making your focus sensual pleasure. That's really what I take away from this passage. It's not really saying that there isn't a place for enjoying sensory experiences, for enjoying, where I started this video, our sexuality, but it is saying beware of not being taken over, as that becoming your primary focus and what draws your attention, your time. And when it does, potentially, it can lead you down a road where you're not only separated from inviting in spirit, if I can put it that way, and living by a spirit, but potentially you're going to be taken over by some things that are a bit more sinister, and obviously end up totally separated from the divine. That's where I am at the moment. A bit of a waffle. I'm reflecting. I'll be interested as ever in any thoughtful, reflective, meditative comments you might have on this. I'm sure I will probably get more insight into this whole area in time. It was something I woke up with this morning and was quite close to getting, I think, a little bit of insight, but didn't quite get there. But this passage, I think, spoke to me today. I hope it's been of interest. I'll be back soon with some more reflections.